and he would drive through town, and I would just be this little 5-year-old sitting in his gigantic car looking out the window, and he'd say, "Hey, see that lady over there? Her name's Mary. She's had a hard life. She put 2 kids through college." And he would tell me these stories about people. "Oh, see that guy on the bench? His wife just chewed him out for not taking the dry cleaning in." He'd make up these stories. Now, I thought he knew all these people, but he didn't. He was making this up. But he told me that it's important to know that everybody has a story. He was telling me at that time and made it clear to me. He said, when you see a person, know that every person has a story inside. You can't just look at them and pass your eyes over and not think of them as a person with a story. Well, I'm a psychologist now. That sunk in, right? I've always looked at life as somebody has a story, and that's from him. That's a value that he instilled in me.
Welcome to They're Not Like Us, the podcast where bold ideas and inspiring stories come to life. I'm your host, Aaron, here to challenge the norms and ignite your potential. If you're ready to level up, don't forget to subscribe and join the movement. Now, let's dive in.
Hello, welcome back to They're Not Like Us. As always, I'm your host, Aaron, and today I'm joined by Deborah Heiser. Welcome to the show, Deborah.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
It's my pleasure. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. I'm an applied developmental psychologist. I started out looking at everything no one wants to have or get in the field of aging. And I have pivoted to look at things that we have in life to look forward to. And I'm the CEO of the Mentor Project, and I just wrote the book, The Mentorship Edge.
Nice. Well, that's it's quite interesting to me that you say so applied. What do you mean by applied? What do you actually do?
So I was a researcher, and what applied means is that I was looking at things that really are part of our life. So if you're in a research situation, you may not be looking at what happens in the real world or real life. So I also was able to go and do a lot of clinical work during my applied developmental psychology program. So I was licensable to go and treat people at the end.
Okay, that makes sense. I've viewed it before, that apply this, apply that, and I wasn't really 100% sure, so I thought I'd just clarify before I started rambling on and talking about something I have no clue about. So, obviously, aging is a big one. I don't know if you've seen that documentary on Netflix where that guy tries to avoid, I can't remember what it's called, but he's trying to avoid aging. Basically, his entire life is dedicated to avoiding aging. He has his entire day is full of routines of what he does, skincare, physical health, all that kind of stuff. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, but boy, is that around us. If you look at commercials, that's looking at how to avoid getting wrinkles and other things. We're built to want to look at our life as a physical journey, and that's how most people think of aging. It's like an inverted V, how most people think of it, that you learn how to walk and talk and you have a really steep trajectory. You're good at video games. Your eye-hand coordination is really great at like 15. You can run real fast. And then you hit a peak pretty early in life. And then you have a slow, steady decline. And that's scary to people. People don't like that. So they'll do things to try to avoid what comes at the end of our physical life, right? Which is scary to a lot of people. What most people don't know, though, is that we have an emotional journey that starts at the same time as our physical journey, and it goes up and it never goes down. So even though I'm in my mid-50s and I'm wearing reading glasses and I can't run as fast as my 20-year-old students, I always tell them I'm happier. I'm happier as I get older, and that's surprising to most people.
Yeah, I kind of in your mind as you get older, you don't feel younger. You like yourself, you get wiser. You get you pick up all this extra experience. So mentally you're stronger, and you get into a point where you have all this knowledge and expertise and experience. And you can do stuff. The body starts to decline, but your mind is not as quick to decline, right? And you just feel like I feel like I'd felt when I was 20, but obviously physically I'm not the same.
Yeah, we also, part of it is that imagine back when you're 20, so you're ready to hit 40, right? So imagine yourself 20.
I don't think I'm ready, Deborah, but I'm getting there.
Okay. So when you hit 40, you have a different outlook on life than you did when you were, say, 18, 19, 20. At that age, although things seem like wide open for the future, it's scary in some ways. Am I going to get where I need to go? Am I going to find what I'm supposed to do? What is my passion going to be? We're in a state that really can bring us more, say, anxiety than it would later when we've already figured it out. We've gone down our path. We've sort of met who our people are that we like. You may not be friends with the same people that you were friends with, all of them, that you were when you're 20, when you would go out and you had the time to meet a lot of people while you were figuring out who you were. So by the time you figure out who you are, you're not as worried about keeping up with the Joneses. You're not as worried about what other people think because you already know who you are. You have a good idea of that. And so you surround yourself with fewer but more meaningful connections, the people that matter more to you. So you the life that you have, you may still be making decisions, you may still have stress in your life and all of that, but it's less anxiety provoking as you get older because you have more resources to draw from.
Yeah, I see that. And it's definitely part of my experience that way. You have a kind of a tighter group of people that you actually rely on, and that you're close to. Um, what it's always seen as very negative, isn't it? Aging.
Yeah.
Like everybody around me sees it as a real negative, and always has. Why do you think that is? Is that just because it reminds us of our mortality, or what's
Yeah.
the reason?
Absolutely. Every, we're sort of taught to avoid the end. And when we're taught that youth is everything. And so once we start to see changes in our bodies, we feel like, uh-oh, I see the end coming closer. But people don't focus at all on anything other than the physical. So that makes it tricky. That's why we fear it. If you knew that you were going to get happier as you got older, you might not fear it as much. If you felt like the end wasn't going to be scary for you because you would be able to reflect and say, hey, I did everything I set out to do. I had great people in my life. And actually, the footprints I made on the world mattered. That's the kind of stuff that we start to think about as we get older, but nobody talks about that. There's just a lot of talk about remaining as physically young as possible on a physical trajectory.
Yeah, I think that might stem from the fact when you see, elderly people that are frail or can't enjoy their life physically. I think that scares people, and I think that kind of sticks in people's mind more than the physically active elderly people who are out and about doing stuff, living their life, or mentally active at the very least.
Yeah.
And I think that probably scares people, and that's probably why that negative sticks with us all the time.
Yeah, there are stereotypes out there all over the place. Our biggest prejudice that we have is about our future selves. We are all, biased against ourselves, and we buy into all those stereotypes that are out there that we are going to be frail, vulnerable, easy pickings for people who are going to try to scam us. But in reality, are the those are outliers. Can you become depressed when you get older? Yes. Can you end up being frail? Yes. Might you end up having Alzheimer's disease? Yes. But it's most likely you won't. So as we age, we think of the things that are fearful for us. When we're young, we're thinking of all the physical things that we can look forward to. Oh, I can't wait to drive, or I can't wait to do something that is something new and exciting. Nobody says, "Ooh, I can't wait for a little drop of wisdom." That is never something that we're really looking forward to. So when we do see the negatives, we think, uh-oh, is that my future? I better cram in all the good stuff now before I hit that.
Yeah, I get it, and I get why people kind of try to avoid aging and try and hide from it or pretend that it's not happening. I do get the fears with it. there are positives to it as well, but it's the negatives that people kind of hang on, me included. I'm not, I say people, me included in this. I'm terrible for it. Like I say, I'm coming up to 40 and I'm dreading it because the stigma that comes with not necessarily being 40, but then that's 40 years. Average life expectancy for men is around 80 years. And I'm like, oh my God, that's half my life. What have I done with it? What am I going to do with the rest if I make it that long?
Now,
that's where your mind goes.
now what you just said is so interesting because that's exactly where you're supposed to be. And every time you're in a new transition, it's not so comfortable. Think about even like getting married or buying a house or doing something that you really want to do or getting a new job. There's stress with that. It's not just a walk in the park for all those things that we're looking forward to. And you just mentioned, will I make my mark? Or, you're now entering the transition. In midlife, we are built to want to give back. It's a stage that's called generativity. And you just touched on that about turning 40. Have you done what you're supposed to do in your life? So right around midlife, that's when you question yourself and you say, oh my gosh, I've done a lot of stuff here. Is that it? I've checked a bunch of boxes. Now what? Most people say, I don't want to keep checking the same boxes I've been checking. And so midlife is a point where you say, I want to make sure that what I have inside of me gets out into the world, the stuff that matters to me, so that I know that my footprint matters. So that we do that through mentoring, we do that through volunteering, and then we do that through philanthropy. Now, not everybody can put a name on a building. So that may not be the avenue that everybody goes for. Most people volunteer, but that may not be exactly what everybody wants. Mentoring is the one that comes from you. If you said, hey, I've got this information, I'm going to do this podcast and I'm going to put out information for everybody out there. That's a form of mentorship. That's a piece of Aaron Parry that's going out into the world, and somebody out there is catching that and saying, wow, I like his wisdom. That's how you can say, oh, my footprint just got a little deeper. And as you do another little bit of mentoring, every time you do that, a little piece of you lives in somebody else, and that becomes a little deeper. So midlife is what you're saying, where you're feeling like this little internal anxiety, that feeling like, ooh, what's next? That gets turned and formed into what you're going to make as your generative sort of output into the world. So you're supposed to be taking everything in when you're young, right? Bringing in all the experiences. 40 and older, you're supposed to be pushing it out. And you just demonstrated in your words before how you are kind of hitting that stage. Does it feel comfortable? No, because it's new. But once you get into that stride, by the time you're 50 or so, it feels good. And so give yourself a little time.
Yeah, I like that. That's put me at ease a little bit. Yeah. But part of this podcast is why I want to keep it raw. So I have my daughter, and I quite like the idea of there being a footprint of me that she can go and look at, which is authentically me. Okay, so like I'm having these conversations. It is me. It's what I think. It's how I feel, and I'm sharing that with the world. But knowing that she'll be able to access that when she's older to see who the real me was. If she wants to, if she doesn't want to, she doesn't have to, of course. But I just feel like it's nice to have that there, and I would have liked that from my grandparents and parents and stuff like that. So to look back and go, remember some of the good stuff, some of the bad stuff maybe as well, because I'm far from perfect. But I just think it's nice to have that, hopefully, permanent footprint out there where they can access and kind of really get to know who I am, because obviously at the minute she's a child, so she doesn't not really know who I am at this stage of my life anyway. And the beauty of a podcast is if I can keep it going, then it will also show my transformation over them years as well. So that's some of my thinking behind what I'm doing.
I love it. That's you being generative. That's you saying, I want the next generation to have my knowledge and wisdom and a little bit about me out there. And that's what is when that term generativity was made, it's you're generating something from you out into the world. And that there are many different ways to do that. And one of the prime examples that people can often resonate to is Ebenezer Scrooge from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I don't know if you've watched any of those. I love the 1950 version with
Love the Muppets
Alistair Sim.
version.
Yeah. And yeah. And so at any rate, Ebenezer Scrooge was a self-made guy. He checked all of his boxes. He was a self-made guy. He lived in a mansion. He had servants taking care of all of his needs, but he wasn't happy. And it wasn't until he started giving back that he experienced joy. And that's just exactly how it works for us. So, it was when he was older. There's no real time stamp on it. We know that it's in general, midlife and later, that we have that innate desire. But he had that, and like overnight, he was like, I'm going to give back. And then he became happy. That's really how it works for us as people everywhere.
Yeah, I like that. I think as well, for me, part of this next part of my life, and something that I've repeatedly told myself, and I think I might have mentioned it on a previous show, is that what I don't want to do is to stop learning and stop growing. That's big for me. I want to continue to learn and grow, and again, this podcast feeds into that because I get to learn off people like yourself and people who are experts in all these different areas, and I can get other kind of opinions and thoughts and theories that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think that's
Yeah.
important to me, that I continue to take in that as I go forward, so that I can kind of build my world and my wisdom and challenge my thinking to keep growing, really.
And that is a part of us when we age, that we have that desire. There's some myth that, you get older and you just want to sit on a chair and like, yell at kids who are on your lawn or something. Like that's a myth, that people want to keep learning. In the US, some of the biggest people who are entrepreneurs are people who are baby boomers, people who are in their 60s and older, and they're the ones who are going out and starting new companies. We all want to keep learning. We're just able to do it differently and more efficiently because we have so much experience under our belt. It's very hard to start something when you're young and you don't have mentors and resources around you. But by the time you're in your midlife, you have a Rolodex or a virtual Rolodex or contacts that you can reach out to, or groups that online or offline that you can reach out to as resources. And it makes it easier for us to do that. So it's a real myth that we do not want to have more knowledge as we get on, because our knowledge is not just here for us to have a better job.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, do you think Western society, our kind of culture, undervalues older generations?
I think that every generation is gaining something. So you're 40, getting ready to turn 40. I'm in my mid 50s. When I was turning 40, I was having that same sort of internal feeling like, uh-oh, did I do everything I wanted to do and what's next? Now I'm already in my stride with that and I'm moving forward, and I'm really thrilled with, where I am. By the time I'm in my 60s, I anticipate that I may want to try something new or different because I'll have more opportunities. So as we age, and as if we have children and they grow up, we have more room and more space to do things for ourselves. As they come back into the house later, as often happens, our time may become more limited as we take on roles with caring for, say, parents or older loved ones, or even a spouse. Our time may become more limited. So it's really like an accordion. It can go in and out, but we're spending our time the way we want to as we get older, as opposed to, oh, I better go in for the grind of work. We're less money focused and much more focused on our footprint.
Yeah, I think when you're younger, there's that big focus and drive, even from society, isn't it? To drive to get you to get a good job, get a house, set up a family, and all that, get a base and all that kind of stuff. And that's a lot of pressure on the youth of society to kind of go ahead and do that. Once they've done that and settled, like you say, the focus kind of shifts, doesn't it, to providing for your family. So then you have that a lot of responsibility and stuff on that side. And then, yeah, I'm interested in the next phase and what comes with that. And again, a bit more freedom again, maybe a bit more time, hopefully financially more stable as well at this point in my life. So who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? But I'm trying to be positive about it.
Try, if you're not positive about it all the time, that's okay too, to say, ooh, mortality is something that I'm starting to think about. That's something that, doesn't nobody welcomes that. And it's like, ah, good mortality. We should be comfortable with not feeling comfortable with that. And I think that if you just say, I'm not going to think about it ever, then that's you just sort of pushing it down, and you kind of are at an unconscious level. But if you're able to say to yourself, what is it that would put me at ease with this thought of mortality? Most people say, I want to, like you said, I want to make sure that I have something for my daughter to look at that has me there in a way that I want her to remember and see me. We have ways and control over the memory that we make in people's minds, over what people carry within themselves. And I'll give you an example. There was a 2012 Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. His name is Bob Lefkowitz. And what he did was he became a Nobel Prize winner. He could have just been like, ooh, I'm good to go now. Hey, I'm going to sit back and relax. But instead, he said, you know what? I want to know, why is it that I became a Nobel Prize winner, not somebody else? What was it that I had? So he made himself what he called a legacy tree. So imagine an ancestry.com tree, something like that, where you have all your relatives that goes all the way back as far as you can see, and the branches go off to the side, and then you have the people that are beneath you, your children. Those were the mentees that he put in. He put himself in the middle, and he put his mentors above him and some of the people that were next to him. Well, he published that in a journal. And a few weeks later, he went to a conference, and somebody at the conference came up to him and he said, hey, Bob, I'm 6 degrees Lefkowitz. And he said, what do you mean? And he said, there are 5 people who worked between you and me. Bob had never met him. He had never met Bob. And so Bob said, what are you working on? And the guy told him. And it was what Bob had started. And knowing that this guy's 6 degrees away from him was using the words that he used, and he could see his work, how far out it got 6 degrees away, and he knew it wasn't done at that point, was so moving to him. He was like, besides my children, this was one of the most epic things in his life. And we have control over that. That is something that most people feel like we have no control as we get older, that we're just waiting for the tick tock of the clock. But really, we have all the control that we could ever want with who we give our knowledge to. You have your daughter in mind. It could be and it doesn't have to be just there. It could be anyone we want. And then we know that snowball just keeps going.
Yeah, it's nice to think of it that way, and to kind of share what I've learned, and other people to kind of take it on and develop it and do their own thing with it. And I think that's human history as well, right? Because I've talked about this in previous podcasts, where I say we're standing on the shoulders of giants, because we, all the past humans that have ever been have got us to this point with this amazing technology where we're at, where we've continually just built on the previous generation. If we all had to start from the same place without that previous wisdom and knowledge, then we'd still be living in caves and throwing stones, but here we are living in these amazing lives, really. When you think about all the stuff we can do, I mean, just look at us talking, across the sea. It's incredible. So yeah, it's really nice that we can kind of look at it that way, and people can kind of take things on and just keep evolving and keep developing stuff.
And what you're talking about, everything you mentioned is mentorship, right? You didn't just pop out of a box and you weren't like, oh, this is my religion. Oh, these are my values. Oh, this is how I feel about the world. There's like such power in grandmas and grandpas and people who are passing things down. That's how religion has been, whatever religion a person subscribes to, it's been around for thousands of years. It's not reinvented every time a person is born. The family traditions and values that you're talking about, we're not sitting in caves because somebody said, here, I made fire. You now know how to do fire. You can move on with that. And that's how we keep progressing and doing things. It isn't like it got lost at that moment. So every one of us is passing on culture, whatever your family culture, your traditions, all of those values. That's more important than passing down, an accounting, thing and work. We need and we crave the feeling of being a part of something. And that's what culture is. That's what our family values are. I can tell you that in the US, we have Thanksgiving, and every year I make the entire meal that is in my grandmother's handwritten, hand, it's handwritten on little cards. And I make the entire thing, even though people don't like every single piece of the meal. And I didn't realize the importance of that. I was making it every year, but my uncle came to visit and he got so tearful because he said, he had been eating his wife's family's tradition, and he came and he was like, "Oh, it's my childhood." And he was, immediately like calmed, and he felt amazing, and he felt like my family tradition is here. It's even just the smell of things. If you go into a house and you're doing things, all of that is mentorship. It's passed down. You pick the things that you feel are important to you and you make sure that that goes someplace. And there's a sense of calm when you hit a certain age where you say, I want that. That makes me feel good. I am not afraid of the end of life the way that I was when I was 20, because I feel like I have control in how I'll live on after I'm here.
Yeah, I do like that, and like I say, I've got some real fond memories of my grandfather and stuff. And when I was growing up, and he's definitely had a massive impact on my life. He's no longer with us now, but I think there is just some things that just never leave you, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily kind of, people think of it as, when you say mentorship, right? People think of, oh, somebody's teaching you to do something, and a lot of the time they are, but you don't know they're teaching you to do something, if you know what I mean. You're kind of just picking it up by doing, or you just these little hints and tips as you're going on that you don't see as a lesson as such until kind of later on in life, and you realize, oh, I've learned a lot from this person.
Yeah. Yeah. We do that without putting a label on it, right? We just move on through our day. But all of that is mentorship. I remember my grandfather taking me out in his car when I was 5, and he would drive through town, and I would just be this little 5-year-old sitting in his gigantic car looking out the window, and he'd say, "Hey, see that lady over there? Her name's Mary. She's had a hard life. She put 2 kids through college." And he would tell me these stories about people. "See that guy on the bench? His wife just chewed him out for not taking the dry cleaning in." He'd make up these stories. Now, I thought he knew all these people, but he didn't. He was making this up. But he told me that it's important to know that everybody has a story. He was telling me at that time and made it clear to me. He said, when you see a person, know that every person has a story inside. You can't just look at them and pass your eyes over and not think of them as a person with a story. Well, I'm a psychologist now. That sunk in, right? I've always looked at life as somebody has a story, and that's from him. That's a value that he instilled in me. Did he say I'm your mentor? No, but does he live on in me every time I see somebody and think of their complex story? Yeah, he does.
That's a great lesson as well, to be fair, because we just take people for granted a lot of the time, can't we? If we don't, actively stop and think, we are the star of our own movie, aren't we? We're the center of our own universe, and then wherever else is going on around us, we don't necessarily really stop and think deeply enough to think this person could be having a really shit time, a really bad
Yeah.
day, something kind of, they're a bit grumpy today. I just take that as they're grumpy with me. But if you dig beneath the surface, actually, maybe they've got a lot going on. Maybe they need a bit of support, a bit of help. But we don't do enough of that as in modern society, I don't think, anyway.
Yeah, but that's how you could think of a million things that somebody, it could be an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a friend that has done that. So mentorship is one of those things that is a calming thing for us. It makes us feel safe. It makes us feel secure when we start to feel like, uh-oh, I'm unsure of my future, which, you hit when you're a kid and you're like, what is in front of me? In midlife, you start to say, oh, what is the rest of me? This is a time when you can get some calm, because you can say, I'm going to be purposeful in what I'm going to do and with whom I'm going to engage and how I'm going to give back. And so if you look at that generative component of, if I were to define mentorship for you, the first thing is it takes somebody being generative. Like you said, I want to be able to give something back to my daughter. I'm going to make a podcast. Well, if somebody's listening, they are saying, "Oh, good. I'm going to take in what Aaron Parry is saying, what his podcast is saying." Right? So you have to have somebody who's giving and then somebody who wants to receive. You also need to be doing it for an intrinsic motivation, not pay a reward or an award or something like that. So if you're getting paid to be a mentor in a workplace, you're not a mentor. You're something else, just not a mentor. It's good, keep doing it, whatever it is, but don't call yourself a mentor because mentors aren't paid. And so that is, if I were to say, would you like to go work in a soup kitchen for a night, volunteering to give out, food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people, you might say to yourself, yeah, I do. That makes me feel good. But if I said to you instead, you know what, on your way there, just take a left and go down to that coffee shop and volunteer your time there instead, you'd be like, no, no, thanks. I expect to get paid if I go there. You also need to have a meaningful connection with the person. So you have to, like, you're anticipating that your daughter will see this. You love her and she loves you. That's a meaningful connection. If you're in the workplace, it has to be somebody that you like. If you're meeting with that person every week and you don't like them, it's not mentorship. If you are in a mentoring relationship, you also have to trust the person. If you think that the person is going to go steal your idea and run away with it, that's not that is not a mentee. If you think that if I tell this person that I don't know how to do something, they're going to judge you negatively, that's not a mentor. You have to trust the person both ways, and you have to have a goal. So it can be a one-off, hey, show me the lay of the land of the workplace, or it can be, I'd like a lifetime of a changing goal that moves with us. So really, when we hit midlife, we're looking at that like ball, that nugget that I just talked about that makes it, something that if we're engaged in that fully, we're connecting with people in a deeper way. We're feeling like we're secure, like we are in a trusted environment. And it makes us feel like we are making our footprint really pretty deep in the world with everybody that we know that we're connected with in that way.
Yeah, I like that. And I think the connection piece, I mean, it is definitely crucial and important. And I think it's just a little theory that came to me when you were saying that, is that I think we probably connect with people that we kind of see versions of or traits of our younger self in them, because then we can kind of, almost feel like we understand where they're at and what they're going through. And I think that's probably why it makes it easier with your own kids as well, because they'll have a lot of your own traits and stuff. So it kind of be easier to connect and see what they're going through and kind of support them through it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
because I've never really thought about it before, but that kind of just makes a bit of sense to me. And I think, like I say, I've done some coaching stuff in the past with sports coaching and stuff, and it's so much easier to teach and develop people when you have a good connection.
yeah, absolutely. Now, mentoring is very similar to coaching, but there's a different goal generally. You're trying to get a person to a specific goal with whatever that is. And mentoring just has a slightly different one. It's the two people connecting over a different kind of goal that's intrinsic, that is, something that you're not getting paid for it. You're not getting, you're not looking for an award for the program, or for the sport or whatever it is, but they feel very similar in many ways. The only difference is that mentoring is an emotional connection. Coaching oftentimes, and I've done coaching myself, it's more goal oriented. It's focused on something that's less emotional. You do not have to have a really deep, meaningful relationship with a person to be their coach. Does it help? Yes. But it doesn't have to have all of those same ingredients that mentorship has to have.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, to be honest, if you'd asked me before the show, do I think I've had, do I have a mentor? Have I had mentorship? I probably would have said no. Probably wouldn't have, but obviously I haven't spoken about it now. I see, the figures in my life, family and friends and all, kind of older generation people that I know have all kind of had that impact on me and that kind of mentorship in one way or another that's kind of developed me, kind of brought me to where I am today, really.
Yeah. Yeah. We didn't get anywhere alone. So, it's always a red flag to me when I hear that somebody says, I've never had a mentor. I got everywhere all by myself. And we never are by ourselves when we get anywhere or do anything. There's always somebody that we're taking their advice. We're seeing somebody model something for us. We're getting exposed to something. All of these sorts of things are ways in which we utilize the help and support of somebody else.
Yeah, and mentorship, because obviously we talked about age and mentorship, but it doesn't have to be an older person necessarily, does it? It doesn't have to be,
No.
it can be lateral almost.
I coined the term lateral mentoring years ago, and that's because imagine yourself if you are an entrepreneur and you're starting out a company. You don't have a boss. Where are you going to get your help from? If I'm a software engineer, I'm probably going to look to my left or right and say, "Oh, hardware engineer, can you help me?" Nothing is ever standalone, and we need the help from others. And I started to notice that entrepreneurs and techies are people who engage in lateral mentorship more than anybody else. If you're thinking of workplace, they're so good at it because they know I need to move this forward. I need to solve a problem. I need to get somewhere. I'm going to call in the help of as many different people as I can. All of those are lateral mentors. And so every time you have asked, say, a friend or a colleague, hey, I have this issue. Can I pick your brain and get your advice and guidance on this? You're asking for them to mentor you. And every time you see somebody struggling and you say, hey, I think I might have a solution or an idea for you. Can you want me to run it by you? You are mentoring them. And we do this all the time without thinking about it. It's organic in us to do this. So if you were to now think of that, all the lateral mentors you have, you probably did it 3 times today and you didn't even know it.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? And I think, you can learn something from everybody.
Yeah.
I think we're quick to dismiss people a lot of the time, but my uncle's quite a successful entrepreneur. He has his own business, and he's had multiple businesses before that he's sold and done well for. But he always says to me that he listens to everybody. He might not act on every bit of advice he gets, but he listens to everybody, from the people kind of cleaning the factory to to the chief executives that work alongside him. He listens to everybody's opinion, takes it in, kind of assesses it, and some of the best ideas he's had have been from the cleaners or from
Yeah,
low level workers who don't generally have a say on the kind of the board meetings and stuff.
absolutely. That's how entrepreneurs think. They don't think hierarchically. They think more, it looks like a spider web. And that's really, if we think of mentorship, it shouldn't be looking at it in a hierarchical way. It also shouldn't just be a lateral way. It's really everywhere. And all of those connections are often interconnected. So that when we look around, there's this giant web that when we start, it looks kind of small. But as we get older, that web gets bigger and bigger. And that's really us with our network of people who are there to help us and who we help. It's really quite a comfort that people don't realize is there when they're younger. But as you start to really reflect on your mentorship, it will really help you to feel like aging isn't as scary as it was maybe yesterday.
Yeah, it's quite a good way to think about it as well, like a spider's web, I think. And that way it's about just building meaningful relationships, right? And you can kind of impact other people's lives, and they can impact yours, and the whole community that you've created essentially can grow together almost.
Yes, that's how it works. And I like to, really make sure that people know that you're a mentor or you're not a mentor. There's no halfway. People talk about, oh, the toxic mentor. There is no toxic mentor. They aren't a mentor. If they're toxic, they're not your mentor. Or, a toxic mentee. No, you're either mentoring or you're not. And the way that I like to think of that is if I were to bake brownies and I left sugar out, it would look like brownies, but it wouldn't taste like it. And if you have one bad section of that, 5 components of mentorship, you just don't have mentorship. And so, when we look at that spider's web, you might be meeting people like you said your uncle did as an entrepreneur and taking in information from people. If you end up connecting in a mentoring way, that will be a thing on your big spider web, a little connection. If you didn't, it just doesn't make it into the web. That's it. So we're kind of doing that all the time without thinking about it, but assessing who's in my world, who isn't, who's my connection, who isn't. It's not like there's a connection that's a bad one. It's a connection or it's not. It's a solid one or it's not. And I think that when people hear that, that's also a comfort in some way, that you don't have to try to make something fit that doesn't. Just say, I don't have to take every bit of information in. Like you said with your uncle, he takes some and he leaves others. That's what mentorship is like too.
Yeah, and I think people need to realize as well. I think to having somebody as a mentor essentially doesn't mean you have to take everything on board. They like, you might have a mentor who's really good and helped you a lot with business, for instance, and they might help you in that part of your life. But then actually, you might really connect with somebody else when they mentor you about family and principles and stuff like that. So you can have multiple people for different areas, and sometimes they can cross over, and there's no kind of set in stone. I think that's what I think when you say mentorship, people get in their head teacher, coaching for some reason, rather than what it
Yeah.
actually is.
Or they think of one person, like that's a lot of pressure on a person to be that everything to that one other person. And you are going to set yourself up for disappointment because nobody can meet all of your needs. So mentors and mentees need to know that mentorship doesn't have to be a lifelong, arranged marriage with that person. It can be something where you are a focused support for a person in one area. It could be one moment. It could be ongoing for that one thing. But what we really should be striving to have is as many mentors and mentees as we possibly can. That every aspect of our life has an opportunity for that. Might not be at that moment that you need it, but maybe you have something you say, oh, I have this family thing I really would like guidance in. Oh, I'd like this business thing I'd like some guidance in. I'd like some kind of a, um, idea on what I'm going to do with a new trajectory in my life. Mentors are there for all those different things, and you can have them all at once, one at a time, however you want.
Yeah, I like that. And we talked off air, Deborah, about my show and how it's conversational and how I don't tend to have a plan as such, and I kind of go where the conversation goes. And part of that reason is because I've had people on the show who might be, entrepreneurs, but actually we've ended up talking about family and values and principles because I've really liked where they've gone with it, and I've learned quite a lot from them. And that kind of happens a lot on my show, where I don't set it has to be about this particular topic, and we end up going somewhere and I end up learning from it, and hopefully other people end up learning from it as well. But that's the big part of it for me that I really enjoy and really like, is just that fact that whoever's on, there's an opportunity for me to learn something. So, and I think if people looked at other relationships like that as well, I think it would improve their opportunities to kind of get mentorship, kind of find people they can click with, and find different areas. You don't have to kind of force yourself down a specific channel. You can be open-minded and figure it out as you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in terms of your podcast being a form of modern mentorship, we now have a lot more avenues, and you can plug in and say, "Ooh, this is a topic I want to learn about or receive some information about. I really trust what you say. I'm going to listen." Take that and all of the other opportunities that are out there, both, in terms of tech and human connection, as ways that we can be connected with individuals meaningfully, even if we aren't seeing them in person.
Yeah, and it's For me, I prefer in person, but this is the next best thing, having video. Like, I'm not great on the phone. Like, I don't like phone calls because I can't see the other person's expressions and how they're feeling and kind of that kind of thing. So I'm really not great with phone calls, but kind of FaceTime or podcasting, video podcasting like this is quite, it's the next best thing to being in person. Really.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to have an in-between. And I saw that with therapy when it used to be that you could only see somebody in person if you were going to get therapy. And then they brought about Zoom and people are able to connect and get that. Is it optimal? No. Is it better than not having it? Yes. And that's what we are here with this as well. Would it be great if people were meeting in person? Absolutely. But is this a great second best? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it means I can expand that spider's web of mine as well, all right? Because I couldn't be flying out to the States
Right.
every week, twice a week to record my podcast. I just couldn't make that work. Even if I had the financial resources, I couldn't make that work. I don't think, with family life and everything else. It's really good because it's enabled me to meet people I never otherwise would have met and kind of build relationships and learn from people, in other parts of the world as well, which is great because it takes it out of my own kind of culture that I live in the UK. So it's a powerful tool, and people can use that to their advantage, really.
Yeah, absolutely. We all can.
Yeah. Do you think when people talk about mentorship, and especially if they think about themselves as mentor, do they think, oh, I can't mentor anybody because I'm not an expert in anything or I don't know anything? Do you think people get that kind of, I don't know, imposter syndrome almost?
I hear that all the time. And I always say, and I adhere to this, that some of our most powerful mentors are our grandmas and grandpas because they're the ones who are passing down culture and values and tradition. And that's how our religion gets passed down. It's because somebody says, this is important, we're keeping it in the family. And so, do you need a degree for that? No. You just have to have something in you that says, this is important to me. And this is what I want to continue on. So that's where I say that corporate America sort of hijacked mentorship because you do not have to have a degree to mentor anybody. You just have to care enough to say, I want to be able to guide you and support you in something that I know a little bit about that maybe you don't know that. You know something I don't. Everyone knows something that somebody else doesn't. And that's all the expert that you need to be is a little bit above that other person in one thing.
Yeah, and sometimes not even that. I think for me, sometimes if somebody, has other kind of life skills, so knowing how to deal with not knowing something, knowing how to deal with kind of the impact of getting something wrong. And those are kind of emotional things almost, or stuff that almost everybody goes through in life that you can help somebody with. That's not necessarily specific knowledge, but it's about kind of, dealing with failure, dealing with success, maybe sometimes.
Well, that is a wisdom that you hold. If you can say to somebody, here's what it looks like to fail, and you will get back up and you'll be okay, and here's how it might look or feel. Is that valuable to somebody? Absolutely. Do you have a degree in failure? No. That is something that, whatever our expertise is in, the most powerful mentorship is the emotional mentorship. It's the one that we hold and we say, oh, this makes me feel good. So we have to really stop thinking of mentorship as just inside the work walls because we're not going to remember the accounting person or the HR person. We are going to remember our holiday meals, our traditions, our culture, our values. We're going to know how a person made us feel. We're going to know that if we feel like we have a potential of failing, that we have a network of people who are there to support us. That's important to us. And that's going to get passed down. That's something that's a value that gets passed down. So I really am eager to get us away from thinking of mentorship as a corporate term and more as an emotional term.
Yeah, I think that's important as well because, in that kind of environment, that work environment, they've already got, you can have teachers and coaches anyway, can't you? Just,
Yeah.
you don't need to steal another term.
You can have a mentor in the workplace, but I think that people should realize that is there a value, um you should never put a value on a person based on their degree, right? So maybe the best mentor in my life was my grandfather. He rode around and said, "Look at people in a certain way." That hit me, as a little kid, and I was like, "Oh, that's part of me now." Um, it isn't always the degree. You can't really quantify that because emotions can't be quantified in that way.
Yeah, and that's the thing I have an issue with in the workplace is you get assigned a mentor. How can you get assigned a mentor? Because that's kind of, you can't force that kind of relationship really.
It usually doesn't work, and it makes people feel like they have to abide by that. They feel vulnerable that if they say, "You know what, this mentorship isn't working. I don't really like this person," or "I don't feel comfortable sharing with this person." They often don't feel like they can say that because they'll feel like a failure. But there's no failure in mentorship. It either is or isn't. You're either a mentor or you're not. You're either a mentee or you're not. There's no, "I'm a decent one." And part of that is that connection. So if you are being matched with somebody, that usually doesn't work. If you're getting paid, you're actually not a mentor. So the workplace has a lot of stuff that's wrong about mentorship, and we should really be thinking of it as, who do we want in our emotional spider web of life?
Absolutely. And I think what I like about mentorship, especially thinking about it back to the kind of aging viewpoint on it, I think some of the things I've talked about on this show previously are about when we kind of get to the age where we kind of come to retire from work. A lot of people kind of live in that thing where they live for work and everything else. They retire, think they're going to just not do anything. But then that's the people who kind of become unhappy, in my experience, from what
Mhm.
I've seen, because they have no purpose.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at it from a kind of mentorship point of view, like we've been discussing, and like how you can give back and how you can help people, it can really be good for your mental health and give you a
Yes.
sense of purpose in life and kind of keep you going essentially and have something to get out of bed for, something to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Don't you feel good when you give somebody something that they've always wanted? Like if you're giving a gift to your daughter and she opens it and it's exactly what she wanted, don't you feel good? That's what mentorship is. It's giving a gift to somebody that when they get it, they're like, "You're awesome."
Yeah, it's a nice feeling, right? Helping people and kind of getting them, especially if you see somebody who's kind of stuck or struggling, and getting them a lot of the time for me is getting them to realize how they can do it themselves.
Yeah.
So not necessarily me doing it for them or saying, "Oh, this is what you need to do," but kind of leading them to it. I kind of really like that, and they kind of get this. But when you see something that just clicks, the light bulb comes on, and they figure out and they know how to do it. And
Yeah.
I really, really like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Who doesn't, right? Like it's just humanity.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a big fan of it. Um, so I did a little bit of research before the show. I don't like to lean on what I've looked at too much, but there was a Harvard study of kind of adult development, so in the adult years, and what they found was like one of the single biggest predictors for happiness in later life wasn't money or success; it was meaningful connections and relationships. So that shows how impactful it can be to somebody later in life, and they kind of, you
Yeah.
know, their mental health and their overall happiness. And um, yeah, I think it's important that people do kind of lean into it.
Yeah, your connections are your lifeline, honestly, and they're your legacy.
Yeah, and one of the other things that they found when they did it is uh, this is based on a survey, so I don't know how many people were surveyed or nothing like that. I'm not dug into it that much. 75% of people aged 45 plus wanted to mentor somebody or give back in some way to, but just don't know how to get started, how to do that. So what kind of advice would you have for those people?
Oh, there's a million ways. And the reason we started the Mentor Project was because I found out that all these top 1% people in their fields didn't have a way to give back. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're burning down libraries, right? All these people, their expertise is being wasted. But honestly, all we have to do is look to our left and look to our right. We're looking at somebody we can help or somebody who can help us. And the other way that we can do that, if we want to mentor someone, you can join organizations and mentor, but you can also look around and say to yourself, I'm in the workplace. Is there anybody that I see, if you're at work, that I think I'd like to mentor? And you just take a look at people the way sort of my grandfather was telling me to look at people. Look at somebody and say, is that somebody that I'd like to see if they're interested in my information? Say, hey, can I give you some advice here? Also, you can go and you can obviously mentor with other organizations, but you can go into your place of worship. You can go into your families. You can go into any kind of organization or group that you belong to in a community. These are all places. The best mentorship is informal mentorship. So if you can just connect yourself with somebody outside of where you are, and that just means looking around, then you're going to be fine. Most people, if they go to even a conference or some kind of a retreat or something like that, they don't realize that's a room full of potential mentees or mentors. You're really surrounded by people all the time. People think that they have to have a formal label put on it in order to feel like they're actually mentoring, and you don't.
Yeah, I think that's where people go wrong, and I see that all the time on the internet. People, like, it's big in the entrepreneurship world, right? People say, if you start, you need to get a mentor, you need to do this, and people keep thinking, oh, I need to. It's like a formal thing. I need to get this kind of nailed on. I need to get somebody to agree to do this. When a lot of the time, it's just spending time with people and having relationships with them, and that will kind of happen and impart if you make that connection with each other.
Yeah, all of my best mentors are people who I say, hey, can I ask you a question? I don't know how to do this. And I don't know how to do a lot. So I ask a lot of people questions. I have a lot of mentors. If I wanted to mentor, I open up and I will say to people, here's my calendar, get on my calendar if you want some mentorship. And that takes that pressure away from the potential mentee. Now, does everybody resonate with me? No. So I wasn't their mentor. The times that it does resonate with me, with them seeking mentorship from me, that's when it works and it's great. So a person can do something like that. Just say, hey, I'm available to be a mentor to anybody, and here's what my area is that I'd like to let people know that I'm here for. You have no idea how rapidly people are going to be, you know, uh, tapping on your inbox because they'll be excited to connect with you.
Yeah, and I think people just need to remember as well. It's not about having all the answers. If
No.
you are a mentor, it's about kind of sharing what you already know and kind of learning as well as you go. You might even learn off the mentee. You
Oh, yeah.
might, I'm sure that happens a lot.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, like, I'm learning from you right now. You're learning from me right now. We're doing a lot of sort of lateral mentoring right now. And that's how organic it can be.
Yeah, I like that. Do you have any kind of key takeaways for people that kind of want to explore this a little bit more, or kind of I don't know, learn a bit more? Maybe they need to connect with you to try to figure it out and trying to learn a bit. Where can they connect with you to do that?
Well, first of all, people can check out the book. It's called The Mentorship Edge. And if you like to listen to it, it's on audiobook, it's in Kindle, it's in all those formats. Check it out because it really will show you every which way you can possibly get involved in mentoring. You can reach out to me. Reach out to me. I have a website, deborahheiser.com. You can reach out to me at the Mentor Project. So go to mentorproject.org, click the contact button, and you can reach me there. I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach me there. I'm out there. So you can reach out to me if you have more questions.
I like that a lot. I'll make sure people get the links and stuff so they can kind of do that. Audiobook's a big one as well for me. I love audiobooks.
I do
It's
too.
make my life so much easier. Just whenever I'm doing a commute, I'll just bang an
That's what I
audiobook
do
on.
too.
Just makes life so much easier because we're all so busy now, right? We don't have time to be sitting down reading for all the time, so we have to kind of fill these spaces when we commute in or traveling somewhere.
It's such a nice, I love that they made audiobooks because I didn't like that at first. but I can get a book in a week by just traveling back and forth to work, and it calms me before I get there, and it's a nice way of calming down on my way home. I don't know, I love it.
Yeah, same. I do find it good, and I kind of listen to a few different ones at once, so it kind of depends on my mood. So
Yeah.
I could have different books going at the same time, essentially, and it's very helpful because I'm terrible for reading. Because by the time I settle down to want to read, I'm usually exhausted, and I'll just fall
Yeah.
asleep after a few pages anyway. So it doesn't really, not at this moment in my life. But again, maybe that's something I'll revisit later on in life.
Well, the nice thing is we have options.
That's it. Before we kind of bring this episode to a close, Deborah, I've got a few quotes here that I'm gonna read out, see what you think. So I've got one from Charles Dickens, who says, "No one is useless in the world who lightens the burdens of others."
Oh my gosh,
Think of
that's
that.
a good one.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that one.
I love that.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one I got, I'll read out to you, is the one from Pablo Picasso, which says, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away."
Love that. I love that. That goes right along with "'Tis better to give than to receive." Love it.
Absolutely. So there's some wise people out there, and like I say, we said about books and reading stuff. That's again another place we can get a lot of wisdom from, and learn from other people, what they've been through, their stories, the lessons that they've learned along the way.
Absolutely. That and podcasts. Podcasts are another great way. We have a lot of resources at our fingertips, and ways that we can connect with others, even if we don't know them in person, ways that we can connect. And there's value in every one of those connections.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Before I bring the episode into land, Deborah, could you or do you have any kind of final thoughts or messages that you want to share with people?
I'd like everybody to look to their left and look to their right. You're looking at a mentor or a mentee, and start engaging with whoever is around you in a way that you can either help them or they can help you.
Love that. Thank you so much, Deborah. I've really enjoyed our chat today. It's been fantastic. So thanks for coming and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks a
Bye.
lot. Thanks again for being part of this journey. Stay tuned. We've got even more great conversations coming your way.